Good morning, and thank you for coming. My name is Robert Trimbath. I'm Vice President of Technology Services for Quasar Data Center. We appreciate you giving us time out of your busy day. We will try and keep it at around 30 minutes, so we have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. Just for your information, we are recording this session. We will be leaving question and answer section at the end out of the recording just for copyright purposes, but again, just wanted to inform you that we are recording. We appreciate your time, so let's go ahead and get started. Quasar Data Center actually produces a product called Quasar Cloud, and in particular, what we call Quasar Complete. And we call this a complete solution for a lot of reasons. Enterprise Cloud was originally developed years ago for large companies. It's built on very expensive hardware. The licensing was very expensive. It was a very profitable and beneficial model for both sides, for the people providing and the benefits for people using it in large companies was tremendous, and mainly because it took a lot of computing power to and put it in the hands of people that were able to use it more efficiently. It's a known fact that most people who buy servers and computers and put them on their premise, or that those servers are usually underutilized tremendously. Like they're only using 15 to 20% of their actual compute capacity, where in the cloud side, we're using more like 90 to 95% of the actual capacity of the machines. It doesn't impact performance, but it just means we're doing a lot more with the hardware, so we're getting a lot more return on our investment, both us and our clients. So let's go ahead and talk about this. What makes it Quasar Complete, Quasar Cloud a little different? About 10 years ago, we bought a failing data center that was just doing co-location and all the typical things a data center does, and basically took the infrastructure, invested in it, and turned it into a proprietary cloud solution that was geared for small business. So we basically took this big piece of enterprise pie and turned it into something that could be consumable for small business at a small business price, and give small businesses, and I mean by small businesses, 100 employees or less, the benefits of cloud without the high costs associated with enterprise cloud. So we're going to talk about that today, that solution in particular, how it can alleviate or totally eliminate your need to buy hardware and software anymore, and move you into a model that's kind of pay for what you use. Kind of like going to the House of Pies, and then, you don't want to buy the whole pie. You love the pie is great, but I only need a single piece because that's all I'm hungry for. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about, is how to get that piece of that pie for your business and get all the benefits of it without having to pay for the whole thing. And so we're going to jump right into this. Let's talk about factors that affect technology real quick. And I'm going to the first three are kind of being in our area in Houston. Weather events cause power events and internet outages and issues with physical buildings. So those four things are kind of almost tied together in our area, because the first one kind of affects the other three below it. And there are other issues with physical buildings a lot of people don't really talk about. So of course we have hurricanes and name storms and all the fun things we get here being on the Gulf Coast. But some people don't think about is when you share a building, you're in a multi-tenant building, and a lot of businesses are. I'm sure a lot of you here are in multi-tenant buildings where you're in maybe a 5-story building, and you're renting part of a floor and so you got maybe 8-10 other companies there in that building or more. Something that people don't realize is the stupidity of one person in that company can affect, in any company outside of yours, can actually affect your business in a degree you may not even consider. And I'm going to tell a quick story about that actually a real event happened about 8-9 years ago. It happened to a client that was out in the Park 10 area in a newer building. They were on floor 4 of a 5-story building, and somebody on the second floor decided to put a metal popcorn container in a microwave and caused a kitchen fire. Now, the fire did not go beyond the suite, but the smoke damage was terrible. went all the way through the building. Of course, fire department kicked everybody out of the building for the day, and everybody had to go home. Now, they came back the next morning basically to a sign that said the building was closed due to fire damage and smoke damage until further notice. So this went on for a week, and finally management clarified that they did not know when the building was going to open again. So as being their IT company, we were tasked with relocating their server, relocating a temporary solution for their phones so they could handle incoming and outgoing calls. We had to find a data center to co-locate their servers at because they were on site. These were things, it was a very expensive. So they paid all these people for over a week paid time off. They had to pay us to time and labor as well as the expense of temporarily doing a short-term lease for space at a data center and getting that all engineered and hooked up. Well, till further notice turned out to be 6 months. They ended up, the whole cost of this thing ended up being $50,000 to $60,000 out of their pocket for a 20-person company. And for that, because we had to also put everything back once the building was accessible again. This enabled them to work remotely and continue to do what they're doing, but they were literally down for almost 2 weeks while this happened, week and a half, 2 weeks. And this, of course, was before cloud was really a viable candidate for small business. That's just recently become a serious contender, like the product we're talking about today. But what it means is that this is, if you include the salaries of those 20 people, this was easily a six-figure outcome for them, pretty close to it. And I don't know how many businesses can just stomach that kind of an expense on demand where you weren't planning it without going out of business. That's a pretty big deal. So be aware. These are things that affect it, and these are things you got to take into consideration as a business owner. So we also have to take into consideration end users. One of our biggest challenges in the IT industry right now is malware, ransomware. Well, the spread of that is coming, majority of it is coming through phishing schemes that come through email, and they're very targeted, especially to businesses. And the problem is they're very clever. They're getting better at it. It's getting through mail filters. People are accidentally clicking on them and infecting machines, which then infect network drives and cause the whole company to be without service while that's being rectified. These things are happening, and now a new element to that is that these ransomware people are actually holding. They're not just encrypting the data and making it inaccessible. They're actually copying it and threatening to release it out to the public net. Which, if you're in a business that has HIPAA and PCI compliant rules applied to it, where that is not supposed to be information that's accessible, that can pretty much put you out of business. That's a big deal. So we focus on end users are a big thing we focus on and take care of, and we train them. We show them what to do, how to recognize email, how to report it, even if it's suspicious. Just because one person knows what it is doesn't mean the other 20 people in the company do. And that's why it's important to understand not just how to recognize it, but what to do when you find it, how to report it, so IT can deal with it and prevent it from doing any damage inside the company. The other thing is equipment failures. A lot of people don't realize, I'll bet you, let's see if any of you can guess what is the major cause of data failure in equipment. And this is desktop servers, everything, laptops, you name it. Anybody? Okay, well, I'm just going to tell you in the sake of time, because we're trying to keep this under 30 minutes. Actually, desktop and laptop hard drive failure, not servers, but the end user desktop and laptop hard drive failures. And that is the 85% of data loss is caused by that. And the reason why that's a big thing to think about is most businesses don't back up their desktops. They only back up the server, and they're relying on the end user to put the data where it's supposed to be. Well, I can tell you 29 years in this industry now, that doesn't happen. More data loss occurs due to people not doing what they're supposed to be doing with their data. They're traveling, they're doing whatever, or they're just not being conscious of it, and they're not actually moving it into the share until they're ready to, and they end up losing data and losing work. So these are things that affect technology and data in business and the integrity of that information. And I just wanted to cover that so you understand how cloud alleviates almost 100% of these issues, with the exception of the end user side, and we have extra protections in it we'll talk about later. So let's talk about the impact of cloud economically and productivity wise. So the new economics the cloud has brought in is the fact that you can see right here, you pay for what you use. It's kind of like that thing with the pie I talked about earlier. You don't have to buy the whole pie. You only buy the piece of the pie you're using. So you're only paying for the users that you actually have. The licensing, the hardware that's needed to run that and to run well. And so if you're a business that's seasonal, let's say you're a tax business, and 5 months out of the year, 6 months out of the year, you got to have twice as many people working for you to handle your tax load. Well, it's nice to have a desktop that we can fire up in minutes. Have it up, your people use it. It's the same one they were using last year. They use it, their email's there, everything's working. When they're done and the season's over, we turn it off. You don't pay for it again until they have to come back on. So basically, you're only paying for the ones that are active. This is a huge advantage financially for businesses because you do not have waste on the software or hardware side with sacrifice to production. Now, there are lower and more predictable costs because of this. Obviously, we don't have to overbuy on licensing. We don't have to overbuy on hardware and have things sitting around. Also, we get to basically shift all those expenses from CapEx to OpEx. And these are kind of accounting terms, but what this means is when you buy a computer, server, software, those are considered capital expenses, and they have to be, if you want to gain the tax advantage of them, your accountant has to amortize, basically take away the value of those things over time or all at once. There's different depending on how your company wants to do it. But by shifting, and so they're not all tax deductible, but by shifting everything into operating expense, because you're basically leasing the solution, let's say, it's very similar to that. So because you're not having to put that money into it, it is an operating expense. So 100% of this expense in cloud is tax deductible. So tax-wise, it's definitely an advantage because you get to write off everything you're spending on your IT side. The other thing is there's an accelerated speed to value. What that means is because you're not having to spend as much on those capital expenses and you're able to do more with less, you are getting a faster return on your investment, where you're also getting able to be up inside your solution quicker and be able to use it faster, which enables you to also get a better return on your investment. So I'm going to go on now to reduce management, and this has to do with more our side, the IT side. So obviously with all the things going on with Intel and ransomware and malware, we have to constantly patch the systems, we have to maintain them, we have to update them, all that because these systems are redundant and there's a redundancy of these systems coming in. You do not have to worry about, you don't see this side of it. You're operating on up-to-date patched equipment all the time. And so you don't have to worry about having downtime as a result of us doing maintenance because the hardware and the software, everything's redundant. You also have faster deployment times. So as you add people, take them away, those changes are almost instant. Also, the security is robust and very multi-layer. What I mean is we have physical security in the building to the equipment. So the equipment is under lock and key. It's monitored. It's also our environmental area is monitored so that the temperatures in the data center have to stay at a certain point. There's redundant air conditioning units, redundant connectivity, and redundant power. So all those things that keep it up and keep it running. There's also redundant layers of security on the software side. So there's anti-malware and antivirus software running at the infrastructure level and at the desktop level and at the endpoint level at which you access it. So there's multiple layers as well as an enterprise class firewall in front of your solution. We use WatchGuard. It's the only one we use, and it is a true enterprise class solution. And that comes in the solution. So it's not anything extra you have to pay for. Everything, like I indicated before, is fault tolerant. So there's redundancies. Like, for instance, our internet mix is a 25 gig pipe that is triple redundant. So our main carriers into that pipe are a triple mix of Cogent, NTT, and Comcast. And actually, we are one of the few data centers in Houston that are actually on net with Comcast, which means that if you're using Comcast to connect to the internet, either via fiber, coax, whatever, within the city, your traffic's not being sent up to Dallas and back. You're actually being sent directly to our data center here in Houston because we are on net with them. So that traffic never transverses the public internet, where if you were with another provider, it would. So that's kind of an advantage that we share. That's just one advantage we share by having the relationships that we have. So let's talk about increased productivity, because this is something that a lot of people really don't talk about. And I'm going to tell you right now that productivity is huge to a business owner. And even if they're not truly thinking about it, it is something that is in the back of their head. So anytime, how many of you ever have had a Windows update start in an untimely fashion? Maybe you got in the morning and you find it still updating because it didn't finish last night, or something happened and it had to revert back. But anyway, it made your machine unusable for an hour, a half an hour. Those kind of things do not happen in our environment. You don't have those kind of losses of productivity. You're always going to be running on the latest software that's safe to run. We do test patches, things like that. We want to make sure they're safe to run. It's not going to cause downtime for you. We can include all the latest internet collaboration tools of Office 365 email. We do include access anywhere. So you have secure, encrypted access from any device, anywhere, anytime. That means you can access it from anywhere. We're going to talk about that next. And we have instant self-provisioning. So if it's very simple for you to get things added, taken away, it's just simply an email to support, and it gets done very quickly. So let's go ahead and talk about how we access the cloud. We were just kind of talking about this a second ago. So you see, and this is an older slide I've taken in. We used to call our system Q solutions. Just kind of ignore this part right here. But the reason I use this graphic is this is very visually representative of how the cloud works. So these are what we call edge devices. These are devices that we use to access the cloud. It can be a laptop, a PC, a Mac, a tablet, a phone. It doesn't really matter. These devices can access your desktop from anywhere, and your desktop, as well as the server infrastructure and storage applications, are all in the cloud. So if your laptop gets stolen, you're not losing anything. If your building catches on fire and your PCs burn up, you've lost nothing. If it floods, you've lost nothing. You can simply go home and work from home, or work from a hotel, or work from anywhere and lose nothing, because this environment up here in the cloud is always up. In fact, we guarantee 99.99% uptime in our service level agreement, which means we guarantee that it will be up 4 nines. That means that you basically, and we financially back it. So if it isn't, we'll reimburse you for the time it's down if it is. I don't know many IT companies that do that, but we do. So we'll go on and let's go on and talk a little bit further about the solution. Let's talk about what's included. So, and this is what sets us apart a little bit differently. So most managed cloud services that you would get, and keep in mind, Azure, AWS, that's Amazon, those are not managed cloud services. Those are just cloud services that have to be managed by your IT company. So you got to pay your IT company to manage those on top of it. So your managed service provider who's managing your endpoints also has to manage that as well. And there's obviously, they have to have the knowledge pool to do that, and they have to and work with it on a daily basis, know what they're doing, and know how to integrate that with your current environment. So and I can tell you that only about half of them out there actually have that knowledge pool. And it's going to be more of the national firms that are more expensive than the local ones. So we include desktop as a service. That's the cloud desktop, everything being there, just all the servers you need, everything you need to function, your shared drives, your servers, Active Directory, your email through Office 365, the integration between those two, the ability to access that desktop from anywhere, anytime, with any device. And it includes our help desk support. That is not the Philippines or India, or hello, my name is Henry, can I help you? It is 24/7, 365, our guys here in Houston at our data center. And our guys are certified in all the technology that we use. In fact, when you walk into our suite, if you ever decide to do a tour, which we'd be happy to do for you, the first thing you're going to see when you walk into our door is our lobby just littered. I mean, all four walls littered with certifications of our techs in the help center, and I can tell you they're covered floor to ceiling. It's amazing. These guys do a good job, and they're kind, they're courteous. It's a family-owned business, so we are very, very conscious of how service is conducted and handled. So the other thing is we are actually independently audited every year. We're SSAE 16 certified data center. That means they come in and they basically check our physical security, our cyber security, our redundancies. They check our employees, make sure that there's nobody working here that shouldn't be. They make sure that our background checks are good. All those kind of things, and they certify our HIPAA and PCI compliance as well. So that's done on a yearly basis. We also include, because of the infrastructure we run an enterprise, what we call NetApp appliances. That's a very expensive physical appliance that's used for storage and infrastructure. We have a data center in Dallas, not only in Houston, but another in Dallas. And so everything, and I'm talking about the servers, the desktops, the network itself, is all snapshotted on an hourly basis and then sent to Dallas. So through a dedicated pipe. So basically what happens is the disaster recovery and the backup element of what we do is built in, and you will never, ever lose more than an hour's worth of data. And I'm going to explain that. What that means is, let's say you have a person that has a desktop and on our system, and they click on something they shouldn't, and they infect it with ransomware. Software doesn't catch it, starts encrypting their data. They call support, tell them what's going on. We get in there, we turn off that particular virtual machine, we revert it back to them within the last snapshot, which will be within an hour. And the only thing they've lost is whatever's transpired within that hour of time. And usually it could be 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 45. It's no more than an hour. And they are back up and working in minutes. It's that easy. No reloading machines, no removing of viruses. We just have to snapshot back to before it was infected, and it's done. That goes for any of the data that's on the servers. If that gets affected as well, snapshotting is instant. It also includes our continuity solution called Quasar Continuity, which is a kind of a disaster some people call it disaster recovery. I like to call it disaster prevention. It means that if anything should happen to our data center in Houston, and I'm going to go into that next, basically it's replicated to Dallas. I'll cover that in some more detail in a second. Now, what makes this different, even for people that sell managed cloud services, is that we are an MSP as well. In 2018, we purchased an MSP called Spectrum 360, merged them with our company, and now we have on-site technicians. So our service, when you buy it, is all-inclusive. It means it includes not only the 24/7 help desk support, but it includes 12 by 5, that's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 5 days a week, on-site service included at no extra charge to you as deemed needed by the service desk. So the service desk sees something that they need to actually send somebody out for, that is, they do it, and it's at no charge to yourself. We try to get out twice a month. Usually it's maybe done by the technician once and then by the account manager one time. But the purpose of that is to do a walkthrough, make sure that you guys are happy with the service, everything is working like it's supposed to. A lot of people that have issues or that are nagging will just not say anything and put up with them. I can't tell you how many times this happens. And a lot of times those little issues become bigger ones. We like to know about the little ones before they become big ones so we can take care of it and know that the system is working the way it should. So that's why we do that. We include mobile device management, not just helping you configure and make sure they're working, but we also manage those devices. So through Office 365, if your phone gets stolen or broken, we can actually disable that account on that phone, removing all the data from it. So if it was stolen, we can take all the data, and all we have to do is say, boop, this device is no longer able to access this data, and it is gone. It wipes it from the device and makes it inaccessible. And getting that linked up to a new device is simply setting up the link, and it will copy in your contacts, your calendar, all the things that were in your other phone will now be in your new phone. Very nice feature. We also support printing and scanning devices at no extra charge. So we're going to make sure all your printing's working. We're going to make sure all your scanning is working the way you want it. And we also support, like I said, phones and tablets. So if you got an iPad or an Android, you need us to hook up your email to it, set up your access to your desktop, whatever. For instance, I work from an iPad Pro. I don't use a laptop to access my work desktop. So when I'm not at home or I'm traveling. So I actually use my iPad Pro to do that, and it works wonderfully. Um, we use help desk ticketing for accountability. Everything's monitored by our support manager, and if anything goes beyond a certain time level, is unresolved within a certain time, it's escalated up to another level where it's immediately dealt with. We have our own internal level 1, 2, and 3 people. We do not outsource any support at all. So all our support for level 1, 2, and 3 is internal. Also, we include cybersecurity training for your employees. We will teach them the basics, tell them what to look out for, how to report issues. Helping you helps us. So we want to prevent the spread of this. I don't know if many of you know this, but in 2017, it was a $6.5 billion business. The new figures that just came in for 18, $12.2 billion. It almost doubled in 1 year. And it's because people are not doing enough to prevent it. And what's really sad is it is completely preventable. So that's the reason why we do these things. And that is one of the number one things we can do is train people, other than the other preventative things we're doing. So let's go ahead and move on here. I said I'd talk about business continuity. Business continuity is the ability for you to be able to work all the time. So if something was to happen into our data center, let's say Houston got hit with a tidal wave and got knocked out completely. I mean, just wiped off, decimated off the face of the earth. Well, all your business data would be fine because everything's replicated to Dallas, and within an hour, your machine, we have equipment that's on standby resource up there. The data is already there. Those servers do what we call a quick spin. They spin up within a few minutes, and the DNS switches over automatically to point to Dallas. And basically within an hour, you're able to access everything, your entire business environment, as if nothing happened. We also have phones that work the same way, hosted phone systems, and that isn't covered in this, but if you're interested in talking about that, please message me through the chat, and I'll be glad to talk to you about a hosted phone platform instead of an on-site. Basically, you'll never miss a call, never miss a fax. It's always up regardless of what happens to your physical property. You will never miss a call. It's fantastic. We use it ourselves, and because we're not always in. I can tell you that 50% of my calls I take on my cell phone that come through my office, and the people have no idea. It's just the way it is. And it includes a lot of tools you will use on a daily basis, and even some maybe you don't use now, but you may use later. So let's move on. Why is cloud better? I mean, it puts your entire infrastructure in a place where it's secure, it's sound, and it's redundant, and you don't ever have to worry about it. One of my clients, who was very resistant at first, was able to convince him to do it, and a year later he came back to me and said, Jan, I talked to you guys about, I pitch you guys to all my friends. And I said, really? He goes, it isn't as much that, the service is wonderful. You guys are great and it works. He goes, I know that if something happens to me or keep people, it's just there and it works. And I won't ever have to worry about it not being, it isn't dependent on me anymore. And him knowing that, he says, it's more of an insurance policy that my business is going to go on. And I never really thought of it that way, but it's the truth. I've been a business owner 4 times in my life, and when I'm not there, my business very rarely operates as it is when I am, versus when I'm not. And knowing that he can walk away and go on a vacation and not have to worry about this stuff, and his people can call us directly and get help when they need it, it's a peace of mind to him. So we include everything your business needs. the firewall, the servers, the desktops, email, the Office apps, Office 2016, remote access to that securely, and the backup and disaster recovery system is built in. So basically, you don't have to worry about paying extra for any of these things. It includes the full unlimited support. So you're not paying extra for either help desk nor on-site support. So there's no need to have any other, to hire an external firm or a separate firm to do your support services. That cost can go away. Nor outside backup and disaster or cloud backup services. All that goes away. Those extra expenses disappear. And this is a fixed cost per user service that scales with your business. So you know that as you grow and you're looking at your business, I can say, okay, this is going to cost me X amount of dollars per person. And that's what it is. That's the computer, the hardware, everything else. In this part I'm going to talk about right now. We haven't really talked about this. I mentioned it earlier. So you no longer have to purchase servers. You no longer have to purchase desktops. You no longer have to purchase the software like Windows 10 Professional to make those work together, or the client access licenses for Microsoft Server 2016. Nor do you have to pay for the Office 365 licenses, because all those are in there. So, and as well as the cybersecurity part of that. So all the endpoint protection, the antivirus and a malware and a ransomware and a rootkit, all that stuff's included. And there's no extra fee to you for any of that. So we also include the cybersecurity training for the employees. This is something a lot of people charge for. We believe it helps both of us, so we don't charge for this. And we actually have a webinar like this that's recorded, that's on demand, that your people can watch at any time. Or we can come on site and do a live one, which we're happy with. We actually do a lot of this for the Harmony Public Schools. I personally go in and do the cybersecurity stuff for parents, students, and teachers within that school district. So I'm starting to talk about the financial side of this, and I just talked about the hardware costs. So I'm going to show you a very interesting slide that really outlines what this is. So let's talk about the and I have startup costs right here noted. I want you to note that the blue column represents the old school way, and the green column represents a cloud-based solution, our cloud-based solution. So let's say that you got a company of 20 employees, and you're either having to do what we call a tech refresh. In other words, all your equipment's old. We've got to buy some new desktops, new servers. We've got to buy up-to-date software and upgrade our server and get up to Windows 10 from, Windows 2000 or Windows 7. And we're having to do some, or Windows 10 Home to 10 Pro. So we're having to spend some money to get there. And we want everybody to have some decent computers. So we estimated this cost. This is actually very conservative. This is for a server, a computer for everybody, and all the hardware and software associated with that, minus, we did not actually include in this when we originally did it. And there are probably around an additional $5,000 to $8,000 in fees from your IT company to set all this up and implement it. So figure this figure is probably closer to 30,000 than 25, but I'm going to be conservative. So let's say 25. Our setup, since it's already done, all the licensing there, and you're paying for solutions there, you're simply paying for your first month for everybody. Plus about the setup fees run around 50% more. So you're actually spending about $2,500 to get this set up. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a huge savings. And this can be up and running in a couple of weeks, where this would take you probably 2 to 3 weeks to get a server in, another week or two to get it set up, tested, implemented. I mean, you're talking to at least 6 weeks for this to be implemented from the time you order it. From the time you order with us, you're going to be up in 2 to 4. And we cut out your piece of the pie. We set it up. We'll talk about how that's done in a second. But this costs $2,500. Guess what your cost is the next month? Well, it's about $2,250. So basically, what you're doing here is your cost on this, if you look at this model, versus what you're going to pay somebody to maintain your other one. So this blue column represents what you're paying your MSP to manage your devices, and this is based on average cost per user, plus your offsite backup solution, plus your endpoint protection. And the extras that you pay for to manage those things. Believe it or not, there's a $280 difference per month between paying for cloud versus paying for the maintenance of this 25 to 30 grand you just paid for. And guess what you get to do again in 3 to 4 years? You get to do it all over again. Where your upgrade costs here, you might have to buy some monitors and keyboards, but the hardware itself is included. And so there's no server that goes on your site, but we do replace your computers with what's called a thin client or our Cloud Connect device. It's the size of a CD-ROM. It is Windows-based. It includes protection for it. There's a very small amount of storage. It's all solid state, so it lasts a lot longer. And there's no data stored on it. It simply powers up very quickly, and it connects to the cloud and to your desktop in the cloud. You sign on just like you would any other desktop, and it looks just like a regular desktop running Windows 10. You really can't tell the difference. And you basically have all the same things you had on your desktop. It's just that everything you're seeing, you are accessing remotely from that's in the data center. So because you're just kind of remote viewing, doesn't take up hardly any bandwidth. When you're downloading and working with things, you're working on our 25 gig pipe. You're not working on the connection that's in your office. So when you're downloading things or doing things that you need for your business, it's working off our connectivity, not your connectivity locally. Huge difference in how it operates and the speed in which things are done. Not to mention, everything is on enterprise class hardware. So everything runs faster. It's not like the $500 PC you're buying from Office Depot or Best Buy. You are running on stuff that costs 100 times that. And that's what makes it a phenomenal solution for small business, is you're getting all that benefit of that high-end hardware and software without having to just paying for your piece. And guess what? Every 3 years, you get to save about 22 grand and put it back in your business. And I don't know about you, but as a business owner, I can think of a million things that could help my business to spend 22 grand on than hardware and software. I could be spending that on additional employees. I could be spending that on marketing. If I do manufacturing or processing, I could be spending that on manufacturing equipment or whatever. But anything other than just buying machines and software that are basically I don't have to buy. So I think you can see the real benefit, the savings here on an overall basis every 3 years over the traditional method. So how easy is it to get in the cloud? Honestly, it's this easy. You just got to give us a user list. That's full name, the email address you want to use. We look at your existing business and look at your applications, like you're using QuickBooks or you're using Peachtree or any other accounting software, any specialty softwares. We will take those, we will set them up in the cloud as part of step 2. We'll set them up on the servers, set up the email, the desktops. We'll test everything. We'll test them to work with your printers and scanners, and we'll make sure everything works right. Then we'll turn around and we'll do an initial data migration. So we'll do a bulk pull of everything that's up there, bring it to our system, set it up the way you want it. And then we'll schedule what's called a cutover date. On that cutover date, that night we will actually do another migration that will be changes from the date we did the first one to the date we did the cutover, which is usually a much, much smaller amount of data. It's just kind of a flush to get everything up to date. We send someone on site, we connect your employees, send them out to connect the devices, show people how to use them, configure your mobile devices to get your new email, and configure them and set them up with access. And we will train your employees on how to do that. And then we will schedule a time to do the cybersecurity training at your convenience, either on-site or remotely. That's as easy as it is. It's no harder than that. It just takes, literally, we have step 1 and step 2 done within a couple of weeks. Step 3 is done over the next week or two, and usually that time is dependent on what's going on in your schedule, not ours necessarily. So just a little background about who we are. We started this business in 2010. It was we are a full service professional and managed IT solutions company specializing in small to medium business. Now, To give you an idea, we do have large accounts. We do, Midland College is one of our largest with over 1,200 users. So we do have the capability to do much larger accounts, but our main focus is small businesses, small to medium. So we like that, 100, 150 or less is what we generally is our sweet spot. We own and operate our own hardened data centers. So we don't lease space from, other data centers. We don't go in, we don't lease space off Amazon or anybody else. We don't have a cage. It's our data center operated and owned by us with our own employees. And you're welcome to tour our data center here in Houston. The one in Dallas is not available for tour. It is a redundancy center for disaster recovery and business continuity. So the main data center that's available for tour is here in Houston. And we do have traditional co-location and infrastructure as a service type of things, but we do everything that's a typical data center would. We have redundant hardware, networking, cooling, generators. We're on redundant power grids that are separate from the building. We're in the Benz building downtown on corner of Main and Texas. We have the third and fourth floor. Our third floor is our main data center, and our fourth floor is additional like cage space for private customers who want a whole space to themselves, as well as redundant power and cooling systems. Generators on the roof with 3 weeks of generator power. The networking is a mix. We have a triple mix of internet. So our hardware, network, and cooling. And the power grids, we're on two separate power grids. We're on two high priority power grids. We're on the same one as the federal penal system and the federal gold reserve, retrospectively. So we basically have both. We are on two separate high priority grids, never been down. You can access our solution from anywhere with any device, Android, iOS, mixed them in. You have no surprises on your fees. You have managed security. That's firewall, endpoint, and infrastructure is all managed by us. Business continuity built in and mirrored to Dallas and no additional cost to you. And 24/7, 365 Houston-based certified support. That's the end of my presentation about cloud, what you get for versus what you're getting with your MSP. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was an MSP provider, which managed services provider, where we didn't have the cloud side. My business was called Spectrum 360 Technology Group. We operated in the Houston area for 10 plus years, and I have 29 years as a senior engineer experience in the Houston area. And I've done work for Dell on 2 continents, and I can tell you right now that this is where it's going. The federal government isn't doing anything outside of cloud anymore because they recognize the value of it. We are actually a choice partner. We're a choice partner group for cloud, which means that we are the preferred vendor for cloud for federal, local, and state government, as well as charter schools and the school systems themselves, which means because we're that provider, you can actually you can actually use our services without having to do formal RFPs, where most people have to do those to get businesses. They have to get 3 because we're already a preferred partner, have been interviewed, screened, and picked. That's something that doesn't have to happen. So just if you're in the E-rate system doing that kind of stuff, we're already set up there. So if you have any questions, I'll be taking them now. At this time, I'll be turning off the recording. Thank you, and look forward to answering some of the questions you guys have submitted.